what is dormant in 99% of the population. In rare cases, that force awakens in a very small percentage of individuals and suddenly their reality changes. What if something is happening right now that will simultaneously start awakening this force in humanity? What if there is a reason why people are feeling weird recently?
There is a sense of urgency because, people said, well, why now? Well, because it's not on our time scale, not on our timeline. It's not up to us. They're here, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. They're here.
Number one, it's not what you think it is. It's not coming from other planets. The evidence doesn't suggest that.
Interdimensional.
Yes.
One of the things that we noticed in these individuals, and this is sort of a side study which I'm working on with a group at Harvard, is we noticed that an area of the brain, the caudate putamen, in many of these individuals was overdeveloped. That's a whole other story, but basically we figured out that this is an area where intuition happens, and a lot of these individuals who we had were, it's called them high functioning. You don't get to be a pilot of an expensive craft without being reasonably smart and having intuition. Just a side benefit of studying this allowed us to come up with a medical understanding of where cognition is happening in the brain, and we're following up with that in a mainstream science way with a neurophysiology group at Harvard.
Professor Gary Nolan indicates that the experiencers of the UAP phenomenon for which he had access to their brain scans exhibit overdeveloped features in the caudate and putamen areas of the brain. He emphasized that those areas of the brain are where intuition occurs. Their research leads them to believe that experiencers are able to interact with or encounter the phenomenon because of this development. But what caused that change?
Maximum. In other words, all our senses are limited. So, with these limited senses, we naturally are seeing through a very narrow kind of tube or very narrow slit in the total reality there is. Now, as you're evolving, what happens is that slit opens up more and more and more. So you see more and more of that reality, and we assume that we see different realities. They're not very different realities, but rather a very extended, broad view of one very large reality.
If this square, represent, I don't know if you can see it with the glare, hopefully
yeah,
you can see. This
we can
square
see
on
it.
this piece of paper
Yeah.
represents the human body, And the human body has something inside the circle, which is called a brain. And that brain resides inside the body, and the brain is responsible for certain functions and biological functions that keep the body alive, keeps your heart rate going and your breathing. And your body, coincidentally, is also responsible for keeping the brain alive through circulatory processes and whatnot. So the brain needs the body, and the body needs the brain. And so the brain is responsible for thinking, the body is responsible for protecting and moving and sustaining. And that's what a lot of people consider life. But there's another element. There's another element to the human being, and possibly to all sentient life. And that is the notion of this triangle. And that triangle is what some have referred to as the soul or the id or the chi or the spirit, right? It is something that does reside inside the body, but is not contained necessarily inside the body. And is it possible that consciousness is part of that process, that spirit, that thing that is all encompassing of what a human being really is, the essence, if you will, imagine distilling a human being down to its actual essence, and that is what you have left over once the carbon of the body is gone and whatnot, the organics, if you will. What's left behind? And that is the great mystery of the universe, because that it is possible to some degree. Some people speculated that's maybe how people can remote view and psychic abilities and all these things that seem to be paranormal, when in reality may have a very perfectly rational explanation. It's just part of a hidden kingdom, but a hidden kingdom to which we're all connected.
Everything you see is one band of frequencies. The highest frequency is light, unified mind. The lowest frequency would be blackness, absence of love, absence of whatever. And physical matter is somewhere right in the middle, right? So you have the ability to tune up higher or tune down lower, and behavior and all these things and time, and it all fucking comes together. But what it means also is that your brain is what's called a transducer. You're an antenna.
So these are okay experiences. In the negative side, it may certainly open you up to astral planes where there are all sorts of dangerous entities, and you will get scared. You'll lose your sleep. You'll lose your mind.
To better understand what is happening, let's examine it from an evolutionary perspective. There may be natural forces at play that will cause a sudden leap in our evolution, which I will discuss later in the video.
Now, there is some backthrow. That is, there are some people here in this area, very few people who are still gorilla-like. That is, they are hairy. They beat their chest when they see their neighbors and a few other things. And then we have other people who are here in this corner, very few of them, who are very highly developed, because we say that evolution is now pushing mankind in this direction, away from the gorilla types towards the very highly evolved people. At this point, we're here. What's going to happen maybe 1 million years from now, 500,000 years from now? This curve is going to shift. It's going to shift like this. That is, the bulk of the population will be very, very highly evolved. We have gone away altogether from the gorilla types, no more gorillas. And what we have here now is the average man, in evolutionary terms. The bulk of the population is extremely, very, very highly evolved. And the cutting edge of evolution here, these are very, very highly evolved people. We can't even imagine what kind of person that will be. He may not have a physical body at all. What's the habitat, so to speak, of this group here? Well, you just go out and you find them. They're all over the place. The habitat of this group here, what do you think? What do you think you find these people here? Hey?
I suspect that you would find them in universities. You'd find the people who are very bright, people who are in the leading edge of professions. That kind of thing. I mean, it's an intellectual thing.
Well, I suggest that you find them in mental hospitals, in nut houses. And the reason for that is that these people, they live in a different reality, in a reality which is very changed, and few of them are adapted to live in this reality, so naturally they can't function very well. So the only safe place, only good place for them would be the mental hospital, unless they can integrate their different view of reality with their daily lives. Now, if they can integrate it, then we have people like Newton, like Darwin, like Faraday. These are the so-called geniuses.
Some believe that evolution is guiding us towards understanding and being able to perceive the ultimate reality. But what if there is a trigger that could speed up that process? Random individual triggers, global natural triggers, and purposely designed triggers by certain people with occult knowledge. And what if we are approaching a major trigger event?
I had an experience in London once that I still don't understand to this day. It was like, I don't know why this always happens at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's hilarious, but for a lot of people. And I woke up and my whole body was just pulsing with like some sort of electric fire, like nothing I'd ever felt before. And feel it, but hear it and feel it from the tip of my toes to my fingers, whole body. And right as I woke up, it wasn't even words. It was more like but it was clear. It was the words, "This is how you connect." And it went on for about 15 seconds. And then I just said, whatever, stop. This has got to stop. And it stopped. So I was clearly awake. I had control over it. But again, where did this voice come from? I mean, maybe it was a dream. The voice was a dream voice of some sort, but the feeling was not. I'd never had any feeling like that before. Interestingly, the next evening, it happened again at about the same time, but only a very fractional sense of it. So I came back and I asked Jacques, I said, what could that have been? And he said, well, maybe it was a Kundalini event or something like that. So I went and read about Kundalini, never heard of it before. It didn't seem to match any of that.
Before you were talking about the people who were the mutants, either being in the mental hospitals or being geniuses.
Yeah.
These are people who have expanded perception, and hence they can see a reality which ordinary people at this stage of evolution are not able to see.
Correct.
What is the nature of that reality which they're able to see?
Well, that is classified as a non-physical reality sometimes. We can take an example, say, let's take a simple example. The family sitting at dinner table, and say there's a kid, maybe 15 years old, 16 years old, and he looks up and suddenly he says to his mother, "Hey, Ma, look at, there's our dead grandmother is standing in the corner." Oh. Mother looks around and says, "No, there's no grandmother there." And she says, "Well, kiddo, there's something wrong with you. You need help."
You're crazy.
So you're crazy. So she takes him off to the friendly neighborhood psychiatrist, and same thing happens. The psychiatrist will ask him, "Well, kiddo, what do you see?" "Well, you'll see, well, don't you see, doctor, over there in the corner, don't you see this person standing there?" Well, the psychiatrist turns around, "No, there's no such thing." Well, and then psychiatrist says, "Oh, young fella, you're in troubles," and then he writes out a little prescription for a little Thorazine or electroshock or whatever, and pretty soon, in a matter of 2 weeks, kid is back in shape, very normal.
No longer sees the
No longer sees anything.
Yeah.
So the process has been reversed. This is called a psychotic episode or acute schizophrenic break or whatever it is.
And what you would say is that there's a good chance that that kid is seen.
Very
The
good
J-
chance
J-
that the kid has a spontaneous opening of his senses.
So that the evolution has been rushed up or
Right.
hurried up?
Yeah. Now, this actually happens. There are techniques to do this. But the Eastern people, the yogis, have developed systems to do this, to push the nervous system rapidly. But it happens very often spontaneously without someone trying to do anything about it, and just happens.
If it happens unrestricted means out of the blue, it kind of happens. Sometimes once in a while there may be cases somebody have had an accident or something and suddenly that it gets triggered. It's not going to happen if a comfortable lifestyle is going on. That trigger may be through stress, through pain, through something like that, through intense spiritual practices, or if you are Arjuna in the battlefield, suddenly the realization comes to you that you are going to kill your relatives. You can't do that, so you are running away. So that's a stressful condition of the mind. Okay, so you have to get out of the normal zone. Normal comfort zone has to be lost. So sometimes it may happen in the